Well, good morning. Hey, so glad you're here. Like Caleb just said, we're in the midst of a series called Fighter. If you haven't been around, the whole idea of this series is to go toe-to-toe with your toughest foes. And I don't know about you. I do know about you. 2020 has been a fight. So we just wanted to take a month to just remind you that, hey, we need to be fighters of the faith. And a couple weeks ago, we told you that you need to know your enemy. And so we gave you about 4 or 5 strategies on how you defeat Satan in this season. Last week, we talked about how to be prepared to take a punch. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I've been hit a couple times this year by situations, and it felt a little bit like a cross. I did not even see that coming, that we need to be followers of Jesus and at the same time be prepared to take a punch. And I've just been reminded this year that I am not an NFL quarterback on a Monday to Friday that cannot get touched. Put the red jersey on. Nobody touch that guy until Sunday. Like, as Christians, like, we can be hit. Like, and that is hard to swallow, but we need to be prepared to take a punch. And I'm just telling you, I'm preaching to myself that there have been a few times this year in which it's like, I wish I was prepared for that, or why didn't someone tell me that was coming, or I didn't know how hard this would be, or whatever it would be. But we want to be fighters of the faith, and today I'm going to talk about this idea that we want to go the distance. This whole idea today is, I'm not done, I'm going the distance. So we're going to talk about that today. Of 2020, it's not the last round. Like, this is just a season for you. There's another year, and there's more plans for you in 2021. And so I want to do what I can to go the distance, to run my faith to the finish. But before we get started, it's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving week. I think it's Isaiah 61, chapter 61, verse 3. Isaiah talks about, in the midst of pain, I put on a garment of praise. And I just stopped this week to think about my thankfulness and where God has shown up. And I'm telling you that things change when you put on a garment of praise. And I just wanted to take a second this morning to say that I'm so thankful for my wife. I'm so thankful for the stability that she gives me at home. She evens out my bad parenting. I mean, the consistency in our marriage. I mean, I said the other night that our marriage in the best of ways is boring. And if you have a good marriage, you get that. You just know it's predictable, it's consistent. I can count on her. That I'm so thankful for that, and my family and the leaders of this church. Patty Bailey, our secretary, she's getting ready to step off here at the end of the year. She's coming off staff, and if you've ever had a good secretary, you know a good secretary, you know how much pain they carry and how much, I don't know if you've ever led or ran a business and you've changed the names and you've had to budget and different things, and Patty has carried so much stuff. She's taken away so many distractions from me. Most of you don't even know who she is. I'm so thankful for what Patty's been and what she's done for me, what she's done for the church. Most of you may know this, but I'm thankful for Larry McKibben. Larry just came on our staff. He's a general manager of home church. So business, budget, encouraging the staff. This season is a little bit less lonely as a leader because of Larry. I'm so incredibly thankful for that. I'm thankful for your resilience in this church and this season, that I talk to other business leaders, not church leaders, business leaders. I talk to business leaders, and they talk to me. What they want to know from us are, how are your finances? Because we are struggling. And that's where I have to just do nothing but give credit to God and give credit to your faithfulness in this season. That financially we're way ahead of where we were at, or we're ahead of where we were at this time last year. That makes zero sense to the outside world. We gave away, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but just a couple weeks ago, we gave away over $100,000 for the year. Thankful that I get to be a part of a place in this season where we get to continue to be the church and be generous. But for you, I don't know what kind of pain you're in this morning, but I just want to remind you of Isaiah 61:3, that you need to, let me encourage you to put on a garment of praise in this season. So before I get started, I'm actually going to preach, and this isn't it. Well, this is like sermonette. Amber sometimes says, no more sermonettes. Okay. I just want to give you a moment this morning to give God thanks. And so you can just sit in silence, and you can pray out loud. But I just want to give you, maybe your family, I just want to give you a minute to give God thanks and put on a garment of praise. And then I'll pray for us. God, thanks so much for showing up. Thanks so much for your faithfulness. Thank you for this place to worship this morning. I thank you for the people that are in the room this morning. I thank you for the people that are listening online today. I thank you for your son. I thank you for the hope that we've been able to have and hold on to. I thank you for your promises in this season. It's pretty hard to trust anybody in our world these days, and in leadership, it's often hard. But God, thank you for the promises and the hope that we have in you and the trust that we can have in you. God, I'm just asking this morning that your word just be real loud and clear, that we don't just walk out of here just knowers of the word, that we're doers of the word, that we do something with this today. God, help us to leave here different. I'm asking at this point that you remove all distractions, that you would speak through me, that you would get me out of the way. And above all, God, we just thank you for Jesus. I'm asking these things in his name. Amen. Tuesday, check this out. Tuesday afternoon, noon, Amber tells me I was home at lunch, and she told me she was having trouble with her contacts. And I've been having trouble with my contacts too, because like the mask fogs up my glasses. So I wear glasses, and I wear them a lot at home. But the mask and the fogginess and all, and I'm just tired of it. So I'm just going to wear my contacts like relentlessly. And like this morning for me is like I felt like I was putting rocks in my eyes. You know, like you ever have that? Like, so I got them in. But Tuesday, Amber's been doing the same thing. And Tuesday, as she was taking out her contact that was kind of like stuck to her eye. You know, some people that aren't contact users are like, oh, I'm about to gag. If you are a contact user, you totally get this. That like she was trying to take her contact out and it was kind of stuck to her eye, and she finally got it out. I'm like, okay, that's great. You know, I'm going to go ahead and go back to work. And then she called me later in the day, and you know, she's feeling a little feisty, you know, and I'm like, hey, what's up? She says, well, Cass, our friend, had the kids, and when I was taking out my contact, I had this, what is it called, the cornea abrasion or something, where she actually scratched her cornea while she was taking out her contact. And so for about 36 hours, we didn't see Amber at our house very much. She was just in the bedroom, like staying in the dark. Well, actually, you didn't see us, her eye. But I've really become a dad in 2020. But there was about a 36-hour window of time when Amber was dealing with her cornea abrasion. I hope I've termed that right. In which I was playing 3-on-1 with the kids. And I don't know, like dads, if you've been in that moment of recent, but maybe you have kids, maybe you've been there, maybe you babysat your nephew at one point, whatever it would be, like 36 hours, 1-on-3 and me. It is a brutal, it is a tough combination. And by Wednesday evening, Amber's like coming back to life a little bit, and I am like ready to throw in the towel. I'm ready to tap out. I have had enough. We really need you. You really matter. And it's like, oh, I am so done doing the 1-on-3 thing. And maybe in 2020, like you felt that way? Like, has anybody just had, like by raise of hand, like, oh, I'm about to tap out on 2020. Like, I'm done. Like, throw in the towel. Like, I jotted some things down that maybe this is you. Maybe this is you that you're just ready to tap out. That, I'll be honest with you, 5 of these 6 I have felt in 2020. And they all start with the same letter because I'm a pastor now. That's what we do. We start things with the same letter. The pace robbed my peace. The pace of 2020, it's robbed my peace. At different points in this season, I'm ready to tap out. The pace is, I can't sustain this pace. The change it is robbing my peace. I talked with Scott Sims this past week, who is on the mend. The guy is on the up. It's going to be a slow process, but the guy is still pointing people to Jesus. He's still gracious. He's slowly coming back. And I talked to him this past week, and we were talking about that 2020 has felt like you're swimming upstream. And maybe you felt that way. Maybe in 2020 you're ready to tap out, like the problems that have come your way have just been like paralyzing to you. That I can overthink things. This is me again. I can overthink things at times in which it's like paralysis by analysis. Like you just got to move forward. You can get stuck in a situation that maybe the problems of 2020 have just paralyzed you. And you're like, I'm about to just throw in the towel. I'm about to, my mind, I'm like on brain lock, Like maybe 2020 has been so problematic to you that it is just paralyzed you moving forward. Maybe the pain has changed your perspective. There's something about, like for me, my wife's better than me, but when I put in the contacts and they feel like I've got rocks in my eyes, my attitude goes right with it. Maybe the pain of this season has changed your perspective or your attitude. And you're just ready to throw in the towel. Maybe there's like the downtime. Maybe some of you just had downtime. It's just like mentally you've gotten to a place that you've never been before. You're thinking about things you've never thought about before, or mentally, like the downtime has left you depressed. I know a few years ago, I took a sabbatical, and so I was off work and like recharging for 7 or 8 weeks, and honestly, about 2 weeks in, I would tell you that I was depressed because I did not know what to do with the downtime. And some of you, maybe you felt that. I'm just ready to throw in the towel. And then this last one that maybe you've struggled with, that you just want to throw in the towel on, is you've struggled to just manage the monotony of 2020. That you like, what am I gonna do? Like I'm bored, or I feel stuck, or I feel like God pressed pause. And I don't know what to do now. And I was making progress, and this is what God's purpose was for me, right? And now it's just on pause, and you've struggled to manage the monotony. The worst times for me in 2020 this year, March to June, I don't know, about 15 Sundays when we weren't gathering as a church, Sunday mornings, I would get up and start bouncing off the walls. Because we would pre-record sermons in church and nobody would be in here, and that piece would be a little bit weird. And then Sundays would get really weird because I would just be frustrated. And Amber's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to go back to bed. I'm going to go on a run. I'm going to call Travis Spencer and talk to him about, do you feel the same way I do? Because this is terrible. And this doesn't feel right. And we're trying to make progress, and then we just hit pause. I am not managing the monotony very well. And honestly, like in some weird way, it felt a little bit like prison on Sunday mornings of, oh, I'm stuck. I want to read you a scripture this morning, a passage from Paul, who actually wrote a letter to the Philippians in prison. And if you know Paul, he had like an incredible amount of purpose in which he's planting churches. He's pointing people to Jesus. He's super intense. And then all of a sudden, can you imagine being Paul? I am planting churches. I'm pointing people to you. I'm doing the will of God, and now I'm locked up. And it just pressed pause. And if I'm Paul, I would think, oh, I'm just going to throw in the towel. Like I flipped my life upside down for you. I've done look at what I've done with my faith, and I'm planting churches, and you begin to make it about yourself. And Paul was writing this letter, and he's locked up in prison. Like progress stopped. And it would be so easy. If I'm Paul, I would become so discontent. Like sabbatical, 2 weeks in, I'm down and out. I don't know what to do. I would struggle to be locked up. And you think about what Paul's doing here is what this letter we're about to read. He's writing to people that are free, yet he's in prison. And in the midst of all of this, like he's explaining, like, I'm learning to know Jesus, but I'm not there yet. And in the midst of prison, and in the midst of being locked up, he was able to like maintain his perspective. They're like, hey, this prison, this season, it's not permanent. I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm not done yet. And Paul was able to maintain this joy. And I've learned some things about the word joy this year. Is you have to, joy, you need to focus on the future for joy. Because when I look back, or when I look in the present and the current circumstances, sometimes I can become frustrated. But Paul knew the end of the story. And for that, he could hold on to joy and focus on the future, not these temporary circumstances. And some of us have become, maybe come a little bit to believe, oh, this is permanent. And let's look at what Paul says. It's Philippians chapter 3, verses 12 to 14. It's on the screen. I'm going to read this from the Passion Translation. My guess is the Bible you brought with you this morning is not the Passion Translation, so you can read along with your translation. You can get on the YouVersion Bible app and pick the Passion Translation, or you can cheat and be lazy, and we bailed you out. Ethan and Caleb bailed you out. So here we go. Philippians chapter 3, verses 12 to 14. This is Paul, stuck in prison. He should be mad, downcast. I'm about done. Watch what he says. I admit that I haven't yet acquired the absolute fullness that I'm pursuing. I admit that I haven't yet acquired the absolute fullness that I'm pursuing. He only said it once. I read it twice. Sorry. I like that right out the gate, he's being authentic. That his obedience isn't automatic. Like, I connect with people like that. Oh, I admit. As soon as somebody says, I admit, oh, I'm leaning in. Tell me about your weakness. Hey, I admit. Let me just be authentic. That this does not, I'm not doing it. This isn't happening automatically for me. Some people you just watch, anytime, I remember with Scott Sims, you say, oh, I admit. Oh, your authenticity, it allows me to understand that it makes you real. Paul goes on, he says, but I run with passion. I run with passion. I read that this week. I think about the John Wesley quote that he says, John Wesley, he says, you set yourself on fire with passion and people will come to watch you burn. And people, Paul was so passionate that people, we have to know more about this. He said, but I run with passion. And he goes on to say, into his abundance, so that I may reach the purpose that Jesus Christ has called me to and wants me to discover. And it stood out to me this week, that I may reach the purpose that Jesus Christ called me to. The word purpose, like its original meaning, the word purpose means your original intent. That I may, if I can read it again, into his abundance so that I may reach Jesus' original intent that he's called me to fulfill and wants me to discover. There's so many problems. There's so many distractions. No. I'm going to get focused on my original intent. That I was made in the image of God. That I'm called to be an ambassador of Christ. Verse 13, he says, I don't depend on my own strength to accomplish this. He said, I think he said in verse 8 or 10 earlier in this chapter that I can't count myself righteous through my behavior, but through my faith in the cross. And through my faith and hope in Jesus. That's where my righteousness comes from. I don't depend on my own strength, that I lean into the strength of Jesus. However, I do have one compelling focus. When I've gone wrong this year, I've lost track of my one compelling focus. I got distracted by situations. I got distracted by social media. I got distracted by an election. I got distracted by my mask. I got distracted by the guidelines. And no. All of these things. I got distracted by the fact that I'm locked up. I got distracted by God. I think you may have lost your mind. You've lost track of me. I got distracted. No. However, I do have one compelling focus. I forget all of the past. And maybe like you have a really good memory and you've leaned into the grace of God, but you also remember your past and you get stuck in the past. And Paul was right there with you. Do you know in Acts, in the first church, that Paul was a part of stoning Stephen? He was a part of killing Stephen for following Jesus. Do you think Paul, it was in his mind at certain days in prison when he's locked up and he's thinking back that, oh my goodness, like I have messed up. Well, Paul was a part of stoning Stephen, and he says, I forget all of the past as I fasten my heart, get this, as I fasten my heart to the future instead. That we have to be people that focus forward, not on the challenges, not on what we're frustrated with in 2020, that we would focus forward. And then this is kind of the main idea, as he says in verse 14, I run straight for the divine invitation of reaching the heavenly goal and gaining the victory prize through the anointing of Jesus. And so what I want to spend the rest of the time talking about, and the bottom line, the main explanation to that passage is this whole thing. This is what Paul's saying. I'm not done. I'm going the distance. I'm not done. I'm running this faith race to the finish. That I'm not done. I'm going the distance. And maybe you need to tell yourself that today. That no, I am not done. My business is struggling. My marriage is struggling. I am so done with the way we have to teach. I'm so done with whatever situation it may be, or God's timing hasn't fit your timing this year. And you need to remind yourself, I'm not done. I'm going the distance. That 2020 does not define me. The difficulties, the sins that I've committed, frustrations, the lies I've become to believe this year. No. I'm not done. I'm going the distance with my faith. I just want to give you 5 things that you can do to apply this week. That when you're about ready to quit, or I don't want to go any further, or you've taken your focus off the future and you started to remember things of the past, let me help you remember so you can say to yourself, I'm not done. I'm running the distance. I'm going the distance. I'm finishing the race with my faith. Is number 1 is this idea. And this isn't exciting. But there's purpose in the pause. There's purpose in the pause. Like, I don't know if you watch boxing. I don't know if you watch fights. But there's a minute or two in between each round. And there's not a second wasted in the pause in action. There's a guy in the corner telling them what to do. There's another guy that gives them ice. They're evaluating what's happening. They're deciding, hey, you have to do something different. You can't get back in there until you make this change, or this strategy has to look different, or you just sit down and rest, or you do different things to like strengthen yourself mentally. I've learned this year, there's a purpose in the pause. There may be something for you that like it just got paused, and I just want to remind you that there's purpose in it. That I will say, like, our rock bottom moment for me in 2020. Here, before I say this, because I feel a little bit like, listen to my struggles. Like, my home life in 2020, my family, we've never been better. And in fact, I think about some people that I know they're going through struggles, and I also know that home's not good, or there's multiple layers going on, and I think, oh my gosh, I don't know how they're doing that. And so home has been good, and that's kept us so solid this year. But this is what I can tell you. In May, Mother's Day, we were like week 8 of no church. And Mother's Day, this is kind of like, this should not come as a surprise to you, but maybe you don't know this because you're not a church nerd like me. But Mother's Day is like our second biggest Sunday of the year, behind Easter. And I think it's just because, what's Mom want to do? Everybody go to church with Mom. Father's Day? No, it's whoa. It's true. That's a real thing. That's all. I mean, because we want to play golf. So on Mother's Day, it's a big day, and we planned like some big stuff online, and we had like internet issues that day. And also, by the way, we missed our biggest Sunday about 3 weeks prior. It was Easter. We weren't there for that, so we were a little bit down. And then so like Sunday, May 11, May 12, we have internet issues, and our church, our service I don't think it happened until like 4 or 5 p.m. And for Amber and I, it was like a rock bottom moment. We end up here on Mother's Day evening. What a way to spend Mother's Day. We ended up in our parking lot, looking at the church, what exhausting options of where do we go from here? What do we do different? Do we up our internet? Do we pay $500,000 to do church? How long are we going to stay in this zone? Can you do church outside? Let's look at the forecast. Rain. Not in 20. It isn't April showers, May flowers in 2020. No, it's May. Rain. So we can't do church outside. And we just sat in the parking lot. And that day, we just cried. And we prayed. And it's like, what? Mentally, not really, but mentally, my mind was like, I just want to quit. I'm tired of swimming upstream. And we just sat in the parking lot and we prayed. And here's the frustrating part. The only thing we felt from God that day was, you be patient. You just be patient, and you best surrender. That night in the parking lot, we read together Psalm 27:14, that be patient. Wait upon the Lord. Be strong and courageous, because waiting always feels weak to me. But no. David said, no. You wait upon the Lord. Be strong and courageous. Yes, wait upon the Lord. And so Amber and I, we sitting in the parking lot and like, okay, here's a couple things that we can do in this moment. In the midst of this pause, because we're frustrated, we want to make progress for the church. We want to point people to Jesus, and we don't understand this. And it was like, no. This is what we did on Sunday, Mother's Day, is we gave the church back to God like it was ever ours to begin with. Like, we just surrender. And this is a daily grind for me. Amber has to tell, hey, actually it's God's church. Like, to surrender. And maybe for you, like, maybe that's not your deal, but maybe it's like, you need to learn, like, resilience in this season. You need to learn patience in this season. Maybe you need to know, God pressed pause, and it's like, hey, you should look in the mirror and get your health in check. God pressed pause. They're like, are you really in the midst of 9 sports? God pressed pause, and there is purpose in it. God pressed pause. All of a sudden, I had time to spend with my family. God pressed pause. All of a sudden, I established a habit to start reading daily and start going to God in prayer every day. Like, God pressed pause, and there was purpose in it. I love what Proverbs 14:29 says. It says, whoever is patient has great understanding. But one who is quick-tempered displays folly. Keep your cool. Keep your cool. Keep your cool. God is working. Keep your cool. Wait. There's a purpose in the pause. Number 2 is you got to let go of your past. You have to let go of your past. Paul, he didn't get hung up on, I was a part of stoning Stephen. Let's just get stuck back there in the past. Your calling is too strong. Our message is too strong. Time is too short for you to get stuck in the past. You have to make the most of today. Like, what I'm learning this in 2020 is you can get stuck in the past or you can make progress, but you cannot do both. Like, you need to decide. You need to let something go. You need to forget about the past. We were coming home yesterday from Champaign, and I looked up in my rearview mirror, and I realized my rearview mirror is so small, and my windshield is huge. Because it really matters that I'm focused on what's in front of me, and what's really small is my rearview mirror, because it's in the past. That we have to let go of some things. And some of us, we are so struggling with bitterness. I told Caleb Bertrand a couple weeks ago, I have to be honest, I've become bitter about some things in 2020. And Proverbs 24:29 says, do not say, I'll do to them as they've done to me. I'll pay them back for what they did. How many of you, don't raise your hand, but how many of you are like, oh man, I connect with that. Like, I'm carrying some sort of bitterness and I want to get payback. You need to let it go. Galatians 2:21, maybe you're struggling with grace. This is something I read on the regular. Galatians 2:21, I do not treat the grace of God as meaningless, for if keeping the law could make us right with God, then there was no need for Christ to die. I mean, can you imagine? So you're holding on to guilt. Do you know how mad at you I would be? God's not mad at you, but I would be mad at you. If I gave you Mason, so you have him. He will pay the price for your sin, and then he did it, and I watched it, And then if you stood around and been like, well, here's a couple bucks for that. Or here, let me throw a little something in. I cannot let go of the past. Or I have to do something. It doesn't feel right. Well, you need to let go of the guilt. Like God would say, I've already paid for your past. You're not done. You need to go the distance. You need to recognize that your past, your present, your sins, they've been paid for. You need to let go of the guilt and move forward. Number 3 is this, is you need to fasten your heart to the future. And I'll put this up there, is you need to refuse to run out the clock. I never played basketball, but Ttown High School used to play basketball, and well, they still do. But they used to, not in 2020. But Ttown High School, they played early on. They would always play in the preseason before they started the Big 12. They would play a team called Ttown. And Ttown should whip Ttown because they're like 5 times bigger than Ttown. And Ttown would always come up to the Ttown High School gym and Baker Gymnasium. Is that right, Baker Gymnasium? I don't know. Okay, all right. Too much. Who cares? And Ttown would put the smack on Ttown every year. And here's why nobody likes Ttown. If you're from Ttown, we like it, but not the basketball team. They refuse to just run out the clock. They actually would run up the score. There was one night my freshman year in a high school basketball game. I think there's 8-minute quarters. They put up 100 points on Ttown in a high school basketball game. A kid had a half-court shot at the buzzer to beat Ttown 100-40. They refused to run out the clock. As a follower of Jesus, I refuse to run out the clock. I'm committed to running up the score on hell. I am taking as many people with me as possible. I'm not just saying, oh, this is just me. That's great. Oh, my salvation. No. It isn't just about me. I'm fastening my heart to the future. This is about my kids. This is about your kids. This is about the next generation. This is about those with no affiliation. No. I'm running up the score on hell. That I am going to fasten my heart to the future. I'm not done. I'm not settling. I remember about 3 hours before my stepfather passed away, he was asking me questions about my personal life as a doctor was telling my mother and I that he's basically drowning. And my father-in-law, or my stepfather, with just a few hours to live, is asking me about Michigan football. He's asking me about how my relationship with Amber is. He's asking me how I'm treating Jesus and how Jesus is treating me. And I'm thinking, this is jacked up, man. You're about to die. Nope. I refuse to run the clock out. I want you to come with me. You have got to fasten your heart to the future. There have been times in 2020 that I forget, why am I in this? My heart has detached from the future. And I have to put this, as creepy as this sounds, I have a few pictures of the next generation on my phone, different students, different kids that matter to me. And I will put their face up on my screensaver that every time I open my phone, no, I'm fastening my heart to the future. I am fighting not just for me, but for them. That I refuse to run out the clock. I want to be somebody like that. Colossians 4, 5 and 6, it says, live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. I want to do that. I want to fasten my heart to the future. I refuse to run out the clock. I want to make the most of every opportunity. Number 4 is this idea, is your character needs to align with the cross. Your character needs to align with the cross. I took my kids, Amber and I took our kids to school. It was like Thursday or Friday. And we no more than backed out of our driveway, and there's just a pack of EIU cross-country runners. And here's how we knew that they were EIU cross-country runners. Because they were basically wearing a face mask. They had on like the short shorts, I got into running at one point. I never got that serious. I said, no, I draw the line there. But these guys were just no shirts on. It's cold. They're wearing next to nothing. And it was very obvious that their character and how they were acting and what they were doing is like, oh, they're on the cross-country team. That's obvious. And then we got up a few blocks from our house and we pulled up to a stop sign. And there go a couple more. Wearing the same deal, or they were wearing very little. And as they go by, we knew those guys are on the cross-country team too. It's their character, what they were wearing, how we identified them. It was so easy. It lined up with, they're on the cross-country team. That your character has to line up with the cross. That there have been so many, me included, situations in 2020 where it's like, no, you're a Christian. You're a follower of Jesus. Like, you got to get up. Or why are you saying that? Or why are you doing that? And like, no. Like, you're confusing everyone. Like, our character, it's got to line up. Our conduct, it's got to line up with the cross. And I don't know about you, but the cross, to me, when I think about the cross, I think absolute selflessness. And in 2020, for myself, it's like, there are times I'm just selfish. I mean, what an act of leadership. Jesus laid down his life. It's like, I want my conduct in some ways, as much as possible, to line up as I fight my humanity, to line up as I fight my flesh, to line up with the conduct of the cross. I want to be selfless. In Philippians 3:18, it says this. It says, for I have told you often before, and I say it again, with tears in my eyes, that there are many whose conduct shows they are really enemies of the cross of Christ. I want my character to line up with the cross. And last thing, I promise, number 5 is we have to live like citizens of heaven. That you're down, or you're so like you're citizen American, or you're citizens of frustration, like whatever it would be, like you have to recognize, you have to live your life like you're a citizen of heaven. Like this is not your home. That you were made in the image of God. The citizen, I looked it up just this morning, like about 2 minutes before church started, and it says that a citizen, it's how you recognize the subject. It's your identity, and we are citizens of heaven. Amber and I, last week, we ran into some friends, old friends from Ttown, and we met them in Ttown, and they were talking to us, and they were like, we can't believe you all live in Charleston. Like, are you going to raise your kids to be Trojans? And we're like, yeah, we're citizens of Charleston now. It's who we are. That's it. I mean, it took us a few years to get there, but we can verbally say that we are citizens of Charleston. We're for Charleston, and we're going to love our community. We are citizens. You can recognize us because we are citizens of Charleston. Well, as followers of Jesus, we are citizens of heaven. We got to continue to point people to Jesus in the midst of this. That we got to continue to represent love. We have to go the distance with our faith. And I will just close with this. If you're tired, if you feel defeated, if you're like, oh, I just want to throw in the towel, like it's temporary. When we get in the car, our kids, they always say, our kids are at the age that, you know what they say? They say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we almost home? I'll just remind you, we're almost home. Like, we are a vapor. I'm not going to just let the clock run out as I'm a vapor. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to live my life as a citizen of heaven. That I may feel down today or in 2020, but I'm going the distance with my faith. Let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for this letter that we can read, that's such a reminder, that's so inspiring, that we can look at Paul and how he had this incredible purpose, and then yet he's in prison. And he has this perspective that's longer than just the temporary pain that he's in. God, help us to learn. Help us to get that. Help us to apply this. Help us, if we're down today, God, remind us of what you've done for us. Remind us of the hope that we have in you. God, help us to apply it this week. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.